Have you ever wondered why some of the smartest people you know seem stuck in a cycle of financial anxiety despite earning six figures? They've got the education, the credentials, the high-paying jobs, yet they're constantly stressed about money. They upgrade their apartments, buy the latest gadgets, and somehow still feel broke. The answer isn't about their intelligence or their income. It's about something much deeper, their relationship with the concept of enough. The psychology of enough is one of the most underrated factors in financial wellness, and it's particularly pronounced in high achievers and intelligent people. You see, intelligence itself can actually become a liability when it comes to money. Smart people are exceptional at problem solving, at optimizing, and finding the next edge. But that same quality that makes them brilliant in their careers often works against them in building wealth. Let's think about how this works. When you're intelligent and ambitious, you've internalized a specific belief system. More is always better. If 10,000 is good, then 20,000 is better. If a modest apartment is comfortable, then a luxury apartment is more comfortable. If one advanced degree helped your career, then 2 degrees must help even more. This isn't stupid thinking. It's logical. It's rational. But it's also the thinking pattern that keeps smart people perpetually broke. The reason is something psychologists call the hedonic treadmill. It's the tendency for humans to return to a relatively stable level of happiness despite major positive or negative events. When you get a raise, you feel great for about 3 months. Then you adapt. Your new baseline becomes your reference point. Suddenly, that salary that once felt extraordinary now feels normal, and you find yourself wanting more. Intelligent people are particularly susceptible to this because they can rationalize it so effectively. They can build elaborate arguments for why they need the next upgrade. They understand compound interest, so they convince themselves that investing in experiences or upgrades will pay off somehow. They're skilled at justifying their desires through logic. But there's something else going on beneath the surface. For many high achievers, the pursuit of more isn't really about the money itself. It's about validation. It's about proof. When you've built your identity around achievement and excellence, stopping and saying this is enough feels like failure. It feels like you're settling. It feels like you're not trying hard enough. Think about the messaging you've absorbed your entire life if you're intelligent and ambitious. You've been told that you're special, that you have potential, that you should aim high. Excellence is the baseline. Good is never enough. Better is expected. This is useful for getting into top universities and landing prestigious jobs, but it's devastating for financial peace. Because here's the thing about always chasing excellence. The goalposts move. They always move. There's no finish line. There's no point where you've achieved enough excellence to stop. The next achievement is always visible on the horizon, and it's always slightly out of reach. This is the treadmill, and it's running at maximum speed. What makes this particularly insidious is that intelligent people are also excellent at risk management and strategic thinking, so they don't feel broke in the traditional sense. They have savings. They have investments. They understand diversification. But they experience a constant, low-grade anxiety about money because they're always acutely aware of what they don't have yet. They can calculate exactly how many more years until they hit their next financial milestone. They can see all the gaps between their current situation and their ideal situation. Meanwhile, they're working at maximum capacity to fill those gaps. The high-paying job demands long hours and constant availability. The side hustle requires evening and weekend time. The investment portfolio demands attention and optimization. The personal brand requires social media presence and networking. Everything is optimized for more, and yet the feeling of having enough never arrives. Let's talk about what happens when you live in this state perpetually. Your nervous system is chronically activated. You're checking your bank account more than you check your messages. You're doing mental math constantly, calculating net worth and projecting future scenarios. You're comparing your progress to others who are further along. You're scrolling through real estate listings for houses you can't quite afford yet, imagining the life you'll have when you can. This comparison game is particularly brutal for intelligent people because they're good at complex analysis. They can easily break down why someone else succeeded financially and create a detailed plan to replicate it. But in doing so, they're constantly confronting evidence of their current inadequacy. They're always aware of the gap. The tragedy is that this approach often works, at least in the short term, Intelligent, ambitious people often do make more money. They do climb the ladder faster. They do accumulate more assets than their peers, but they rarely feel rich. They rarely feel secure, because the definition of enough has been permanently moved forward. So what's the antidote? It's not to stop being ambitious or to stop caring about achievement. That's unrealistic and honestly undesirable. The antidote is something much harder. It's to consciously, deliberately, and repeatedly choose to define what enough means for you, independent of external metrics. This is radically different from how you've been trained to think. You've been trained to let others define your goals. Society defines what success looks like. Your peers define the appropriate lifestyle. Your career path defines what you should be earning. Your industry defines what's normal. But nowhere in that is there space for your own definition of enough. Defining your own enough requires clarity about what you actually value, not what you think you should value, not what's impressive to others, but what actually brings you contentment. For some people, that's time with family. For others, it's creative work. It's the ability to travel or to help others. The specific values don't matter. What matters is that you get clear on them. Once you know your values, you can work backward to determine what enough looks like financially. If time with family is your value, then enough is the income level that allows you that time without constant stress. It might be less than you're currently earning. If creative work is your value, then enough is the safety net that lets you pursue it without desperation. If impact is your value, then enough is the resources to create that impact without needing to pursue maximum income. Here's what's remarkable about this exercise. Most intelligent people, when they do it honestly, find that their enough number is significantly lower than what they've been chasing. Not always, but often. The lifestyle they've been imagining as their goal doesn't actually align with their deepest values. They've been chasing it out of habit, out of momentum, out of the hedonic treadmill. This realization is both liberating and uncomfortable. It's liberating because suddenly, financial peace becomes possible. You're not playing an unwinnable game anymore. You're not chasing an endless horizon. You can see the finish line. It's uncomfortable because it requires you to admit that some of what you've been striving for wasn't actually for you. It requires you to accept that enough might look smaller and quieter than you imagined. But here's what happens when you make this shift. Your nervous system finally relaxes. You stop checking your net worth obsessively because the goal feels within reach. You stop comparing your progress to others because you're no longer playing the same game they are. You stop experiencing every paycheck as a disappointment because it's not bringing you closer to an imaginary target. Instead, it's allowing you to live your actual life. Intelligent people are uniquely positioned to benefit from this because their intelligence doesn't disappear. You don't become less capable or less successful. What changes is your relationship to success. You redirect that analytical brain toward questions like, what would my ideal week look like if money wasn't a constraint in the way I think it is? What am I actually afraid of? What would make me feel genuinely secure? These are not easy questions. They require honesty. They require you to sit with discomfort. They require you to challenge narratives that have been reinforced for decades. But that's where the real work of building wealth happens. Not in optimizing your investment portfolio or finding the next side hustle. Those things matter, but they're secondary to this fundamental shift in mindset. The psychology of enough is really the psychology of permission. It's giving yourself permission to stop, permission to rest, permission to define success on your own terms, permission to opt out of the race that everyone else is running. And here's the interesting part. When you give yourself that permission, you often end up making better financial decisions anyway. Why? Because you're not making decisions from desperation or anxiety anymore. You're making them from a place of clarity. Should you really buy that luxury car, or does it not actually align with your values? Should you really upgrade your apartment right now, or are you upgrading because you feel like you should? Should you really take that higher-paying job that demands more hours, or would your enough be better served by your current job with more free time? These questions have different answers for different people, and that's exactly the point. There's no universal right answer. The right answer is the one that aligns with your definition of enough. One more thing. Defining enough doesn't mean you never grow or achieve more. It means you grow and achieve from a place of choice rather than compulsion. You might still make more money, but because you decided that money enables something you value, not because you felt inadequate without it. You might still pursue ambitious goals, but because they genuinely excite you, not because they're the next rung on a ladder you're supposed to be climbing. Smart people often stay broke because they're playing a game where the rules are set by someone else and the finish line keeps moving. The path to financial peace isn't about being smarter or working harder. It's about finally, consciously, and deliberately asking yourself, what is enough for me? And then having the courage to mean it. That's the real intelligence.